Alright guys, our next guest is arguably the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. He is the UFC Undisputed Flyweight Champion. He is currently waiting to see who he fights next as the winner of the Ultimate Fighter 24 is announced. He is, of course, Demetrious Johnson. Demetrious, welcome back to the program, man. How's things?
Things are good, man. Thanks for having me back on. I always love coming on here and talking to you guys, and everything is good.
Oh, it's good. It's good. It's good to hang out with you. Welcome to our new hang session. Let's talk about Tough 24 for a second. Have you seen the new season of The Ultimate Fighter yet?
Of course, I've seen a new season. I was on it.
What do you think, man? What's the thoughts
It's
so
awesome.
far?
It's awesome. I've always thought about it's a tournament of champions. With Joseph Benavidez and Henry Cejudo being the coaches. I mean, it's just awesome that the UFC is finally getting a chance to showcase the 125-pound talent that's around the world. So, you got a champion from Japan, Brazil, Legacy, Titan, you got them all. And I'm excited that they're doing it.
Well, last time we spoke to you, you barely had time to digest the idea behind the Ultimate Fighter 24. A few months later and a bunch of changes later, it looks like you're a bit of a fan of the concept now.
Yeah, absolutely, because I thought they were just going to go around and just grab, do open tryouts. And, I thought that wasn't right. I thought that, they're going to do open tryouts. And I think a lot of guys should be able to get out of their contracts to try it, because that's what everybody in the UFC is trying to do is get a title shot. You look at Joseph Benavidez. He's racked up 5 consecutive wins against top-tier guys. And, you look at, Ryan Benoit. He said he wanted to, get out of his contract and jump in the tournament too. And I thought that would have been fair, but then they're like, we're going to get champions from all around the world to see who's truly the number one champion. That's what we're going to do. So the guys who are in the house, they are champions. They're professional athletes instead of the guys who are reading the regional circuit or fighting at the casino, or 3-1 or whatever. It's actually Matt Chanel Danger. He has a name from the MTV show. If you ever saw that, it's a
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting you say that. The UFC obviously scrapped those tryouts and obviously went with the plan that you just mentioned. Was there any point where you sort of voiced your concerns to the UFC about any of this, and did that have anything to do with the format changes?
No, I gave him my honest opinion about what I think might sound better, or actually I gave my first opinion about the first thing, and then they kind of went back and changed a little bit of it, and I think it worked out for the better.
So, essentially, it's because of you this format change, correct?
No, I don't want to say this is with me. I would just say that, I gave my opinion, and somebody might be like, oh, that actually sounds a little better. Let's just go with that. I'm not the executive producer or the producer of the show. I'm just, the end game for the show, you can say.
Well, you'd think they'd throw you some executive producer credits. I mean, you are the champ and possibly pound for pound the best fighter in the world, but we have to get your thoughts. What do you think about the talent so far and the fighters and champions the UFC have pulled together? Do you rate them?
Yeah, they're, do I like them or do I rate them?
Well, I mean, from a fighter's perspective, do you think they're high caliber fighters? Yeah,
absolutely. They're champions, especially, I've always had a high respect for the Shuto Japan. That's where Kyoji Horiguchi comes from. He's an amazing fighter. You also look at they got Shuto Brazil. That's Andre Pederneiras, this kind of stuff. So I'm a big fan of all these guys. The biggest thing is that they're champions. The one thing they might run into is that, you saw the episode last night where Zulu fought, the Japanese champion. So you basically had Africa versus Japan, essentially good old Street Fighter style, With that being said, you see Zulu, his stand-up is way better than the Japanese champion, but, in Africa, they're not known for their wrestling. So you can see there are deficiencies in some of these guys' game. We've only seen a couple of fights, so we'll see how more of the show, turns into.
And I mean, deficiencies are definitely not something that you want to have when you step into the cage with yourself. Do you think that any of these guys are at the top sort of 10 level compared to the UFC caliber of flyweights?
That's a hard thing to say, my friend. The UFC top flyweight is no joke. I mean, there's been a couple guys in there who fought in the UFC already. Guys like Tim Elliott, Demarcio Page. They've been at the UFC level and they didn't do so well. So the top 10 level is no joke. We're fucking killers and we're beasts out there. We're monsters in the octagon. So, we'll see what happens.
Do you have a pick? Is there someone that stands out to you on the show that you think might make it all the way and maybe even end up facing you?
Yeah, when the show got announced, and they grabbed, some of the old UFC veterans, I went with those guys. I went with Tim Elliott and Demarcio Page. Those guys have been in the big show. They fought the best around the world. Demarcio Page, he's fought in WEC, and he's also, champion. Tim Elliott, he's already fought, in the UFC before. So I went with those guys. They have the more experience. These other guys, they have experience too, but they never had experience under the big lights and the big shows, and that's a huge difference.
Do you feel like this is pretty much the exact thing that the UFC Flyweight division needed? Because obviously you're sort of at this point where you're facing a lot of the same guys and people are sort of looking at your future opponents thinking, man, there's a lot of rematches in store, and all of a sudden you've got this massive influx of new names and faces. Do you think this is kind of what the division needed?
Absolutely, and I hope the UFC keeps all the guys on the roster. They're all amazing fighters, and we need a bigger roster. And now, essentially when I look at the show, they're basically trying to build stars out of the show. And the only way you do that is get them on TV, you let their personalities get seen, and then keep, half of them, the guys who perform very good. And then you also have two other coaches who are getting a lot of spotlight TV time, Cejudo, Joseph Benavidez. And then with that saying, I'm getting spotlight TV time, not like, reality TV time, but I'm also getting, they keep bringing up, this guy's going to be good to fight Demetrious Johnson. Oh, this guy could probably beat Demetrious Johnson, blah, 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 so forth and so forth. So it's good. And then at the end of the show, you might come out with 5 stars to where now, you can market some of it.
Yeah, and a lot of people are talking about that. This is one of the better TUF seasons that's been around for a while. So I feel like it brings a lot of credibility back to TUF as well. But you'll face the winner of TUF in December. When we spoke to you last time, you said that you wanted to fight around September and that December was too late for you because you wanted to stay active. How do you feel now that you'll end up fighting in December anyway?
I feel good, man. Like I said, I suffered a little injury during. Hey, 1 second. Hey, you say sorry right now. Get your ass back here. Oh, punish that one. So like I said,
the TUF show. Attacking you.
Yeah, right. So when I got injured June 25th, that's when I had to pull out the Wilson Reis fight. And with that being said, I was trying to fight 3 times this year, and my body just wouldn't let me do it, So it's good that I'm giving my body a chance to actually relax. I actually got to enjoy summer vacation for the first time in maybe 3 years. Wow. So I'm very excited. I don't regret it at all. I actually got to enjoy a little bit of life with my children, took my son to preschool for the first time, his first day of preschool. So I'm enjoying life, man.
That must have been like a completely new world for you. Did you almost forget what it was like to sort of enjoy a holiday? And was there some sort of much needed time that you needed to spend with your family?
Yeah, just to do some, I don't want to say soul searching in my life, but just hang out with my family. You spend your whole life working to build wealth and build a family and all that stuff, and sometimes people get to stop and smell the roses. And for me, I've been building up my Twitch channel. I've been very excited for TwitchCon this month. I'm excited for my kids to go to school. So I'm just excited to work hard for it.
Is there anything, I'm wondering, a lot of times when people sort of take this time off, obviously in your case it was sort of incidental, did you discover anything about yourself? Was there any moment where you sort of like walking by a beach and you were like, bam, big epiphany right here?
No, not at all. I think the biggest thing is after my injury, when I first started fighting, one of my coaches, he said, friend, he said the first thing is that you always there's 2 things that fighter needs to do is make weight and fight. Only 2 jobs. And the second one was, the third one was make sure you always have enough money to cover your bills for at least, 3 or 4 months, regardless if I can't make any money. And so that was a big eye opener. I mean, I've always saved my money. I'm not a big flashy guy. And, when I got injured, injured my LCL, who knows? I didn't know when I was ever going to come back. I didn't know if it was a torn ACL or what. So if I was not blowing my money and didn't have a lot of money coming in, then, I'm basically stuck. So, I just realized I'm a smart man. I'm setting myself up for a great future to, if I keep fighting like this and save my money like this for another 6 years, then I'll be set up where I don't have to go get a day job if everything goes according to plan.
Well, just speaking of that Wilson Reis fight, UFC 201, you mentioned the injury that forced you out of the fight. But what were your honest feelings about fighting the number 6 ranked guy as your title defense?
It doesn't matter to me, my bills, my paycheck's exactly the same. I think you see a lot of guys who are starting to come out and say, no, I'm not going to fight that guy, even though he's a number 1 contender, because I want a better paycheck. And you're starting to see a lot of champions do it. And I understand why they're doing it, because UFC's made it a point. Champions don't get paid the top dollars. And, the people, you got a guy who can come out who's never lost. I have nothing against GSP, but I like to keep it real. You got a guy who hasn't been active in 3 years, and he's got way more money than any champion on the roster, probably besides Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz. But that's what the UFC has started to do. And you're starting to see a lot of people say, you know, if I don't get this title shot, this is not a sport at all. And I think we're starting to lose that mystic to where we have, you know, two of the best fighters in the world going and fighting each other to become a champion. But now everybody's like, you know, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight the number one contender. I want to fight the guy who everybody likes to watch fight, so I get that big paycheck. Trust me, I'm about to jump in that boat too, but I will never turn on a fight, and I'll just fight anybody.
So just sort of explain that, because it sounds not so much that you're down on super fights, but it sounds like it's not really a priority for you. I guess one of the big questions is, where do you sort of stand on this Dominick Cruz fight? Because if your paycheck is always going to be the same, does that mean you're not so much going to be campaigning for it?
No. I mean, it's not the right time. You know, I think, you know, let me throw this in your guys' pond real quick. Let's say I was going to, you know, I beat the Ultimate Fighter winner, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go fight Dominick Cruz. And then you guys, okay, sweet, he's finally going to do a super fight. But let's say I beat the Ultimate Fighter. I defend it again. That's 9. I do it again, there's 10. I'm on the verge of breaking Anderson Silva record. I break Anderson Silva record. I have 11 consecutive title defenses. I've broken the record. And maybe then everybody's like, you know, you're the best pound fighter in the world. And then I'm like, okay, Dominick Cruz has defended his belt multiple times. He's built his name up. He's been active. And then I'm like, boom. All right, now it's time for the ultimate. Now it's time for the super fight. I think if I go that path, it's going to be way better and sell way better, do way better numbers than if I was like, okay, I'm going to go fight you now, Dom. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So you believe sort of down the line when the timing's right, it's going to be much better. But do you ever worry that if you wait around till the timing's right, the fight may never actually come together? Because obviously Dom's got some tough challenges coming up. The division's always difficult in flyweight. Are you worried that if you wait too long, the timing may be off because one of you guys might lose, or the opportunity might not be there anymore?
No, I'm not worried about it. I mean, if it happens, then it happens. You know, that's how I live my life. You know, if I lose this fight against a tough fighter, oh well, shit happens. You know, you're gonna lose, and I think people who are like, oh, I got to do it now and make it happen so I get the big dollar. Yeah, that's the route they take. But for me, like, one of the things that stuck by me that Eddie Alvarez said in his interview with Ariel Helwani, he says, I'm fucking rich. He goes, I'm absolutely rich. And then Ariel Helwani goes, well, what do you mean by that? He goes, I got a beautiful family. I got a beautiful house. I got a wife that loves me. He goes, I'm rich. And I was like, you know what? That's right. You know, being rich isn't always about money. So for me, you know, I'm already successful. I've already exceeded my expectations of how far I was supposed to make it in this sport. You know, I was the guy who's working 9 to 5, watching Joseph Benavidez and Dominick Cruz battle it out in the WEC, in the WEC cage. So now for me to be like, oh man, I got to make sure to make this happen and this and that, then I'm getting away from the values of what got me into the sport in the beginning, which is just learning a craft, mixed martial arts, and fighting the best fighters in the world. And if the time is right, and if we lead up to that point and it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, then it wasn't meant to be. Bye, Pete.
Yeah, I'm curious because there's been a big shift in former champions complaining about their pay. Luke Rockhold at the moment is holding out to fight because the contract just isn't right. TJ Dillashaw went from getting 70 to show up and 70 to win to 25 to 25 right after losing the title. A lot of previous champions taking a major pay cut. I know you mentioned that money doesn't really matter, but do you ever worry about the fact that if you do lose the title, you may end up in the same position as those guys, getting a lot less than what you're getting now?
I think that's with any. I think that was in anybody. You know, I think the only person who's ever going to lose in a fight is still making $1 million is Conor McGregor. That's just because how his contract structured or whatever. But you know, you got a guy like Luke Rockhold where he was a champion and he lost, and now his pay is not what it used to be when he was a champion, and he's a little upset about it. I totally understand that. It totally makes sense. Same thing with TJ Dillashaw. I was mind-boggled when I saw that Sage Northcutt made more than the champion at 135-pound division. So, I mean, that's just to show you, you know, it is something, don't get me wrong, it is about the money. It is absolutely 110% about the money, because if there was not money on the line for these fights, I wouldn't be fucking fighting. I'll be in the gym still training and having a good time, but I wouldn't be pushing my body to 185 beats per minute, you know, make sure my body's 110% healthy, make sure I'm getting my diet on, and, you know, make sure I cut out alcohol, drinking, and all that stuff. So there's a lot that goes on the line when it comes to us athletes getting ready to fight. You know, you look at the NFL, those guys want more money because we have a short opportunity to make as much money as possible. You know, I'm only 30 now, and I had 10 years. I've fought for the UFC since 2011. So what was that, 5 essentially 5 years I've competed in the UFC, and I've been a champion for almost 4 years. I can't retire right now. So if I was an NFL player and I played 4 years and won a Super Bowl 4 times in a row, I guarantee I can fucking retire. So it's, you're starting to see a lot of fighters like, we want more money so we can be able to retire eventually, instead of we get 38 years old and we're like, all right, I think Costco has openings.
Yeah. And obviously, a lot of these people are sort of complaining about their contracts and stuff like that. And you hear you saying, "Hey, $2 million for Dominick Cruz," and it makes it kind of sound. I guess to some people, like, oh, Demetrious Johnson, he is money focused, but it sounds like you're not one of those guys who's ever really going to complain about his contract. Are you happy with where you are at the moment in UFC and what you're making?
Absolutely. Like I said, I came from a job where I was making $20,000 a year, $23,000 a year, and I was working every single day. So I'm absolutely grateful for the UFC giving me the opportunity to make this type of money. I don't think there's another job out in the world that I can make this type of money. And they've given me opportunity to provide a life for my family that, I never had. So for me, I'm absolutely happy with it. And, I got a great contract. I got the best in the business, Matt Hume, doing all my negotiating. So nobody fucks with Matt Hume.
Yeah, if he's sitting across from you in the negotiating table, you're going to give him what he's asking for. You mentioned that money is not as much of an object for you or an issue for you anymore. Is it still $2 million to fight Dominick Cruz? Or now, with this new perspective, would you take a smaller paycheck to do the super fight?
Absolutely, I think $2 million is fair. I mean, I think it's $2 million. You look at, obviously, we don't have the same fan base. We're not Prom King or Prince or Duke or whatever, like, Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz are. But, I tell you what, our skill set and what we've done in the past as mixed martial artists in this sport, shit. Dominick Cruz has defended his belt more times than Conor McGregor has, and Conor McGregor's been more active than Dominick Cruz has been more active than Conor McGregor has. So that right there, just what we bring to the table as our as athletes and what we've done in this sport, I think that deserves $2 million, especially since the UFC just got bought for $4.2 billion. WME and IMG have the cash to front this fight. So I talked to Dominick Cruz about it, face to face. Me and Dominick Cruz, we're cool. There's no bad blood between us. We're just two great athletes that want to be able to make the most money as possible, and hopefully the super fight will eventually happen.
It's interesting because you said you spoke to Dominick Cruz and you mentioned WME IMG. You've also spoken about how you mentioned to Lorenzo Fertitta about this $2 million. Have you spoken to the most important people, and that's the new owners, Ari Emanuel or anyone like that?
Yeah, I spoke to them before, but we never talked about, shit. They just got a hold of the company. So
Sure.
I think, they just got a hold of the company, and, they haven't even seen me perform yet. So with that being said, obviously, we got the Ultimate Fighter fight first. And if everything goes well in that fight, then hopefully we fight again. And when we get to that 11, when I break the record, we go talk, and I'm like, yo, do you guys want a super fight? I believe this is truly a super fight to where, I am the smaller guy going up to, 135. And you have, a guy who walks around maybe 165 coming down to 135 to meet at 135, and we're going to fight. This is truly a super fight. If you guys want this fight to happen, this is my price. If you don't, I'll keep whooping ass at 125. That's how negotiation goes for me. Like, this is what I want. You guys have an agenda. This is my agenda. If you guys have a problem with me wanting to retire eventually one day from putting my body on the line for 7-8 years for this company, all right, then let's make it happen. If we don't see eye to eye, then okay, I can keep doing other things that are going to make me successful.
Well, I mean, you mentioned those other things. That's the thing. WME, IMG, obviously they're, firmly rooted in the entertainment business. And you say you can't see another, career where you make this kind of money. Have you considered sort of doing other entertainment things? Luke Rockhold's doing modeling, Ronda Rousey's doing movies. Have you thought about doing anything like that? Maybe if WME, IMG get behind your Twitch, that could, do something different. Or you being in movies. Have you thought about doing that once you retire?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the goal. I don't want to just sit on my ass, when I retire from a fight. I want to be active, whether it's, I already know I'm going to be involved in video games some way. I'm already got great connections, with Blizzard. I had a great connection with Ben Guy, doing a lot of things around TwitchCon. So with that being said, if things, open up for the door, like, hey, we want, a badass small black actor to be, not a stuntman, but, in action movies, like The Expendables 8, who knows? And I'm one of the guys, Absolutely, I'm down for that. I talked to Tyron Willie about that whole, aspect of, acting, and he says, he's passionate about it, and that's one thing he loves to do. And that can be something I love to do as well, if I get a chance to actually do it.
Yeah, yeah. And while we're talking about the new owners, we have to ask about Ari Manuel. Is there a real life Lloyd? Were you around long enough to see if there was a Lloyd? And if there is a Lloyd, what is the person's real name? Yeah, we have to get the scoop here.
Hey, what do you mean Lloyd? Are you referring to him as let me think, Entourage, the character Entourage? Yeah, every time I see him, he's always on the phone, jumping on it and say, I know I need this or whatever. So yeah, it's the real thing, man.
All right. Well, let's quickly find your thoughts out about Joseph Benavidez and Henry Cejudo. Those two guys are supposed to fight each other as well. Would you be open to fighting the winner of that fight again, or is it a situation where you've already been there before and it's not that interesting for you?
No, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I fight whoever the UFC wants me to fight. So with that being said, if they want me to fight the winner of Joseph and Henry Cejudo, then by God on me, let's do it. There's a lot of guys. Lewis Smokey, he's I think the only person in the actual division who actually has a legit win streak, like 4 or 5 fights, is I think Lewis, maybe. I have no idea. Sergio Pettis is there. So for me, like I said, man, I'm all about just fighting, staying healthy, and then put on great performances.
Well, let me ask you, who do you think wins out of that? When you fought both guys before, Henry Cejudo, Joseph Benavidez, who do you think is going to come out on top there?
It's hard to say, man. Joseph's been around the sport forever, and he has a lot of tools to win this fight. He's got a submission. He has knockout power. And Henry Cejudo, he's still kind of fresh to the sport. It just shows you that he's such a great athlete that he can just, beat Formiga, who's been in the sport forever. He's beat Chris Carriazo. And so we'll have to see tune in.
All right, Demetrious. Well, before we let you go, we have to let the fans and the gamers know, what are you playing these days on Twitch? Give us an update.
Hey, we're playing World of Warcraft Legion, just dropped on August 30th. I'll probably hit level 110 tonight on the Rogue, rocking Assassination spec. And then I'm also playing H1Z1. So I've been playing that. I might be getting the H1Z1 Invitational for TwitchCon, so I hope that happens. But those are the two main games that I'm playing right now.
And just quickly, we heard that you and Max Holloway, got it on in Street Fighter. Do you want to tell all the lovely people who came out on top there?
Oh shit, 9-1. This guy right here, I gave 1 round. It was a good time. Max Holloway's also a streamer. Go give Max Holloway a follow. It's Blessed MMA on Twitch. He's starting to get his community going, the Brodies, or the Blessed crew. And it's good, man. We had a great time, playing, merging our communities together, because I have, the Mighty Squad. He has the Blessed Squad. It's a great way to build a fan base.
I love it. You guys are like the UN of gaming. And of course, you guys can check out Mighty Mouse's Twitch channel, Twitch TV/Mighty Mouse. UFC 125 is always on there, always doing great things, always interacting with everybody. And if you want to follow him on Twitter, make sure you do that at Mighty Mouse UFC. Demetrious, it is always a pleasure and honor chatting to you, man. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.